Welcome to Zoe Stories. Estrogen changed me. The first thing I noticed that morning was the weight of the little pink pill in my hand. It felt impossibly heavy, though I knew it weighed barely a gram. I stared at it, tracing its smooth edges, and a shiver ran down my spine. This wasn't just another experiment, another late-night indulgence in makeup or a hidden dress. This was something entirely different, something irreversible. Something that would change me, inside and out. I had always lived a double life, though in the quietest, most secretive way possible. To the world, I was just me, a mid-20s office worker navigating the monotony of corporate life, attending meetings, submitting reports, and keeping my head down. My coworkers knew me as dependable, maybe a little introverted, but generally harmless. Nobody would have suspected the secret that thrummed beneath my skin. At home, behind closed doors, I explored the parts of myself that the world didn't know about. The thrill of wearing makeup, the silky sensation of stockings, the quiet empowerment of high heels. It was an indulgence, a passion, and sometimes a solace. Ms., my girlfriend of 2 years, had been my anchor through all of it. She knew pieces of me that nobody else did. The late-night shopping for skirts I didn't dare wear outside, the whispered excitement when I tried on a new dress in the privacy of our bedroom. But even she didn't know everything. Not yet. And that little pill in my hand was about to blur the lines between the life I lived for her and the life I yearned to explore for myself. I set the pill on my bedside table and glanced around my room. Posters of art, framed photographs, and small trinkets filled the space, but today it felt like a stage, waiting for a performance I wasn't entirely ready to give. My reflection in the mirror caught my attention, my hair slightly tousled, eyes still heavy from sleep, lips parted as if to speak the words I couldn't yet say. I had always admired my own face, even in its unadorned state. But the promise of change hung in the air like perfume, intoxicating, seductive, and just a little terrifying. Mrs. voice broke the silence. "Morning, sleepyhead," she said, stepping into the room with her usual radiant smile. Her presence always made my chest tighten, not just from attraction, but from the knowledge that she saw parts of me I didn't show the world. "Didn't expect you to be up so early." I smiled back, though it was fragile, edged with nerves. "Just thinking," I murmured, lifting my gaze from the mirror. Ms. tilted her head, curiosity dancing in her eyes. But she didn't press. She rarely did. She had this uncanny ability to sense when I needed space, when I needed encouragement, or when I needed both. Breakfast passed in quiet conversation, but my mind was elsewhere. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down, each second stretching into eternity. Could I really take it? Could I really start down this path, knowing that my body, and the way the world would perceive me, might never be the same again? And yet, the allure was undeniable. The thought of stepping fully into the self I had only glimpsed in mirrors and dimly lit rooms was too powerful to ignore. The office felt especially mundane that day. I went through the motions of emails, calls, and scheduling, but my mind kept drifting back to the pill, to the transformation it promised. Every glance in a reflective surface, every brush of my hand across the smooth fabric of my work shirt, felt magnified. I imagined the changes before they even occurred, the softening of my features, the subtle reshaping of curves, the way my voice might take on a new timbre. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. That evening, back in our apartment, I finally picked up the pill again. Ms. was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone, oblivious to the storm of emotions raging inside me. My fingers hovered over the little capsule. One small motion, one tiny decision, and everything would shift. I closed my eyes and pictured the new me, the me that had always existed somewhere in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to step into the light. And then, with a mixture of dread and anticipation, I swallowed it. The pill slid down my throat, and almost immediately, a warmth spread through me. It started small, a tingling under my skin, and then intensified, seeping into every corner of my body. I felt my heartbeat quicken, my senses sharpen, and a strange, almost electric anticipation coursing through me. Ms. noticed the sudden flush on my cheeks. "You okay?" she asked, setting her phone aside. Her hand brushed mine, a grounding touch that both comforted and heightened the tension. I nodded, though my mind was spinning with possibilities, fears, and an irresistible curiosity about what was to come. Hours passed, each one stretching longer than the last. I paced, touched, and examined my body with increasing fascination. Every subtle change felt monumental: the softness of my skin, the slight reshaping of my jawline, the gentle arch of my eyebrows. It was as if I were watching a living sculpture being formed, one that reflected not just the outer transformation, but the awakening of desires and identity I had long suppressed. By nightfall, the changes were undeniable. I stood before the mirror, the person staring back at me both familiar and alien. My eyes glimmered with a newfound awareness, my body carried a fluid grace I had only imagined, and my lips curved into a smile that was both mischievous and triumphant. I had crossed the threshold. The pill had delivered more than just physical transformation. It had unlocked a deeper part of me, one that was ready to explore, embrace, and, inevitably, confront the world with boldness. Ms. watched me, a mixture of awe and curiosity in her gaze. "Wow," she whispered. You look amazing." Her words were soft, but they reverberated in my chest like a drumbeat. I felt both vulnerable and invincible, aware that this was only the beginning, that the journey ahead would test boundaries, desires, and secrets I hadn't even fully understood yet. And as I touched my face, my hair, the curves of my body, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. The pill was only the first step. The true challenge, and the true thrill, was yet to come. The morning after my first dose of estrogen, I woke with an odd sense of anticipation. My body felt lighter, almost as if it were subtly reshaping itself overnight. I rubbed my arms and noticed a new softness under my fingertips, a smoothness I had never felt before. It sent shivers down my spine, a combination of excitement and unease that made me pause for a long moment in the quiet of our apartment. I glanced at Ms. as she moved around the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Her movements were fluid, casual, but her eyes flicked toward me more often than usual. Was it curiosity? Concern? Or had she somehow noticed the subtle changes in my frame? My pulse quickened at the thought. I wasn't ready for her to ask, and yet, part of me longed for acknowledgement. The thrill of secrecy was intoxicating, a delicious tension I had never felt before in my life. The mirror in the hallway beckoned, and I approached it almost unconsciously. My reflection looked familiar, yet undeniably different. My jawline seemed softer, and the contours of my cheeks caught the morning light in a way that made me pause. I tried to focus on my expression, noting how my eyes appeared larger, more vivid, and my lips slightly fuller. Every detail was heightened, every feature more delicate and strangely alluring. I had seen subtle hints of these changes before, but today it was unmistakable. I was transforming, and the effects were accelerating faster than I had anticipated. Work felt impossible that day. I couldn't focus on emails, spreadsheets, or meetings. My mind drifted constantly to the changes happening to me, to the way my body was responding to the hormones. Every step I took in the office corridor felt different. I noticed my reflection in the glass panels and found myself pausing, tracing the lines of my body with my eyes. Even my posture seemed altered, my shoulders rolling back slightly, my hips swaying with a new rhythm that felt simultaneously foreign and natural. When lunch rolled around, I excused myself, claiming a headache. I returned to the privacy of our apartment and sank onto the couch, trembling with anticipation. I felt a deep, almost irresistible urge to explore this new version of myself. I opened my closet and began pulling out clothes I hadn't touched in months. Dresses, skirts, blouses. They all seemed to call my name. My fingers lingered on the fabric, the textures sending waves of warmth through me. I picked a soft pastel dress, the fabric falling delicately in my hands, and slipped it on. The sensation was electric. The dress hugged my new curves, highlighting the softness in my hips and the gentle swell of my chest. As I gazed at myself in the mirror, I felt a mix of thrill and vulnerability. This was more than cross-dressing. It was a transformation that was now spilling into every fiber of my being. The curves that had been hinted at for years were now undeniable, tangible, and undeniable. I traced the fabric along my waist, feeling the rhythm of my own breathing and the reality of my altered form pressed in on me. Then came the makeup. Normally, it was a simple, secretive ritual. But today, with the hormonal changes, it became something almost ceremonial. Foundation glided effortlessly across my skin, blending seamlessly. Eyeshadow highlighted the new contours of my eyes. Mascara emphasized the flutter of lashes that now felt heavier and more sensitive. My reflection in the mirror made me catch my breath. This was me, but also someone entirely new, someone I could hardly recognize, yet desperately wanted to explore. I froze as I heard the apartment door click. Ms. had returned earlier than expected. My heart leapt into my throat. I hadn't expected anyone to see me yet, and panic surged through my veins. I ducked behind the curtain, pulling the dress taut to hide my changing form as she moved through the room, humming softly. "Everything okay?" she asked casually, though the slight raise of her brow betrayed curiosity. My pulse raced. Could she see through the layers of clothing, through the careful balance of my gestures? I forced a casual tone, yet just taking a little time for myself. The words sounded strange, higher-pitched, and I felt the vocal shift caused by the hormones. Miss smiled but didn't question further, retreating to the living room. The relief was immediate, but the thrill lingered. I realized that this secrecy, the tightrope between exposure and concealment, was becoming intoxicating. I spent the rest of the day experimenting with small movements, subtle gestures, the tilt of my head, the sway of my hips. Every motion felt like a dance between who I was and who I was becoming, a private ritual that both exhilarated and terrified me. As night fell, I couldn't stop thinking about the possibilities. This transformation wasn't temporary. It was evolving, reshaping not just my body, but the way I perceived myself. The dress, the makeup, the changes, they were all unlocking a new identity, one that demanded exploration, daring, and secrecy. And the most intoxicating part? Ms. was right there, oblivious for now, just a few steps away, while I tiptoed on the edge of revelation. The following days became a delicate dance of observation and secrecy. Every glance in the mirror revealed subtle shifts in my body that were impossible to ignore. My chest had grown softer and rounder, the outline of new curves beginning to form beneath my clothes. Even in baggy t-shirts and sweatpants, the changes were there, teasing me with their undeniable presence. I found myself constantly adjusting, subtly smoothing the fabric over my hips, lingering in reflective surfaces, unable to look away. I began to experiment more boldly with clothing. The dresses and skirts I had kept tucked away now felt like an extension of myself rather than a costume. My favorite pastel dress, soft against my skin, became a daily ritual. Each time I slipped it on, I felt an intoxicating blend of excitement and nervousness. The fabric clung to my developing figure in ways that highlighted the delicate rise of my chest and the gentle curve of my waist. I twirled in front of the mirror, my heart racing as the dress flared out, and I felt a thrill that was both innocent and dangerously compelling. Makeup had transformed from a hidden act into an immersive ritual. Each morning, I meticulously applied foundation, eyeshadow, and mascara, observing how my reflection altered with each stroke. My hands trembled slightly as I applied blush, accentuating the high points of my cheeks, marveling at how the hormones seemed to respond to even the lightest touch. Every contour, every highlight, was a declaration of the new me, a version of myself that felt undeniably alive and, paradoxically, secret. Mrs. Presence added layers of tension to every moment. She had begun asking casual questions about my routines, her tone light but her curiosity palpable. "You seem different today," she remarked one morning as I adjusted my dress. My heart lurched. Was it my posture, the subtle sway of my hips, or the way my voice had shifted slightly higher? I forced a casual smile, brushing off her comment as mere coincidence. "Just trying something new," I said, my voice slightly trembling, betraying the changes I had only just begun to notice myself. Ms. nodded, seemingly satisfied, but the shadow of suspicion lingered in her eyes, like a storm cloud gathering on the horizon. I began spending more time alone, relishing the freedom to explore these transformations without fear. In the quiet of the apartment, I experimented with different outfits, hairstyles, and poses. I tried high heels for the first time in years, feeling my calves tighten and my balance shift with each careful step. The unfamiliar sensation sent jolts of excitement through me, my body responding with a strange, intimate energy. Every step was an exploration of rhythm and grace, a tentative brush with femininity that thrilled and terrified me in equal measure. The hormones brought other subtle changes that were harder to ignore. My skin felt more sensitive, every touch amplified in a way that made me acutely aware of my own body. I would absent-mindedly brush my fingers along my arms or thighs, marveling at the softness and warmth beneath my touch. Even the simplest actions, adjusting a strap, smoothing a skirt, brushing hair from my face, felt heightened, intimate, and deeply personal. These sensations were both addictive and dangerous, blurring the line between private pleasure and the fear of exposure. One evening, as I lingered in front of the mirror, experimenting with eyeliner, Ms. returned home early. The sudden sound of her keys in the door made my heart hammer in my chest. I froze, mascara wand hovering in midair, as the door clicked open. She stepped inside, humming, and paused when she caught sight of me. My reflection met hers in the mirror behind me, and for a split second, I saw recognition, or perhaps confusion, in her gaze. Quickly, I covered the more obvious signs with a cardigan and a practiced smile. "Hey, you're home early," I said, my voice slightly higher than normal, betraying the subtle influence of estrogen. She raised an eyebrow but didn't comment further, moving toward the kitchen. The relief was immediate, but my pulse still raced. That brush with discovery was exhilarating in a way that scared me. The secrecy began to feel like a game. Every time Ms. was near, I adjusted, tested, and experimented, subtle gestures of femininity hidden in plain sight. A flick of the hair, a careful tilt of the head, the sway of my hips while walking across the room. Each moment was a thrill, a test of how far I could push the new boundaries of my body and identity without being caught. The line between fear and excitement blurred, creating an addictive tension I couldn't ignore. By the end of the week, the changes were undeniable. My frame was softer, more delicate, and my reflections seemed to mock the version of me I had known for years. The hormones had begun reshaping not just my body but my confidence, my posture, and even the way I moved through space. The thrill of secrecy, combined with the intoxicating physical transformation, consumed my thoughts. Every glance, every gesture, every subtle sway in front of the mirror felt like a secret celebration of the new me. And yet, a shadow of doubt remained. How long before Ms. noticed? How long before the delicate balance between exposure and secrecy tipped, revealing everything I was becoming? The tension built within me, a slow, simmering storm, promising both discovery and exhilaration in equal measure. By the second week, the changes were no longer subtle, they were undeniable. My shoulders had narrowed slightly, and my hips had begun to curve with a new softness that I couldn't hide under jeans or loose shirts. Even my hands felt different, the fingers more slender, the skin silkier. Every morning, I would trace the contours of my body in front of the mirror, marveling at the reflection that looked like both me and someone completely new. The hormones had also started to affect my voice. It was still my own, but lighter, softer, almost melodic at times. I found myself consciously monitoring it around Ms., wary of the slight pitch changes that could give me away. Yet, there was also a thrill in the control I now had, experimenting with tones, playful inflections, testing the subtle ways I could present my voice without raising suspicion. It was a secret performance, and I was both audience and actor. Clothing had become an obsession. I experimented with styles, I never imagined wearing before. Soft blouses, pleated skirts, and delicate dresses became my tools of transformation, each garment emphasizing the changes that were now impossible to ignore. One afternoon, I slipped into a flowing sundress, the pastel fabric brushing my thighs and tracing the swell of my hips. I twirled in front of the mirror, letting the movement accentuate the natural curves forming beneath the dress. The sensation was exhilarating, intoxicating, and terrifying all at once. High heels became a new challenge and a secret thrill. At first, walking in them was awkward, a constant battle to maintain balance. But as I practiced alone, I began to appreciate the subtle sway they gave my hips, the elegance they added to my posture, and the heightened awareness of every movement. It wasn't just about looking feminine anymore, it was about feeling it, inhabiting a body that responded to these new forms in ways I had only fantasized about. Mrs. Presence continued to cast a shadow of tension over every experiment. She asked casual questions about my routines, my clothes, even my energy levels, but never pressed too deeply. One evening, she glanced at me while I adjusted a skirt and remarked, "You're glowing lately." My heart nearly stopped. The word glowing could mean anything: health, confidence, happiness, but in the context of my secret transformation, it felt like an almost verification. I smiled, forcing a casual laugh, brushing off the comment with a simple, "Just feeling good, I guess." But inside, the thrill of being noticed or almost noticed sent a shiver down my spine. The hormones also brought unexpected sensations. My skin tingled with new sensitivity. A gentle brush of fabric against my arm sent shivers through me. Even the act of running my fingers through my hair was heightened, a subtle intimacy with my own body that I had never experienced before. The line between private pleasure and personal discovery blurred, leaving me constantly aware of my own changing form. One night, curiosity overtook caution. I experimented with makeup in a way I hadn't dared before. Foundation, blush, eyeliner, mascara, all applied meticulously, transforming my face into something softer, more delicate, undeniably feminine. I stared into the mirror, tracing the line of my jaw, the curve of my lips, the arch of my brows. The hormones seemed to respond, as if acknowledging this new version of myself, and the reflection that stared back was mesmerizing, almost hypnotic. The thrill of secrecy had become addictive. Every moment alone was an opportunity to explore, to test boundaries, to revel in the body I was slowly becoming. I practiced movements, gestures, and expressions that felt natural, yet dangerous if discovered. Each swish of a skirt, tilt of my head, or sway of my hips was both a statement and a secret, a private thrill that heightened with every glance in the mirror. Mrs. Early returns from work or sudden knocks on the door became heart-stopping moments. I learned to freeze, adjust, and pretend, mastering a subtle balance between exposure and concealment. One evening, she came home while I was adjusting a blouse in front of the mirror. I froze, holding my breath as she stepped into the room, casual yet suspicious. Her gaze lingered for a fraction longer than usual before she smiled, unconsciously tipping her head in a gesture I now mirrored. Relief washed over me, but the adrenaline lingered, a heady mix of fear and excitement that defined these new days. By the end of part 3, I realized that I was no longer the person I had been. The hormones were reshaping not just my body, but my perception, my confidence, and my desires. Every glance, every step, every subtle gesture felt like a secret dance between who I had been and who I was becoming. And the most intoxicating part? The line between discovery and secrecy was razor-thin, making every moment at home, every interaction with Ms., charged with suspense and possibility. By now, every moment alone felt like a dangerous playground. I began to experiment with more elaborate outfits, skirts with lace trim, silky camisoles, delicate jewelry. Each choice heightened both my confidence and my vulnerability. The transformation was no longer subtle. My body responded to the smallest adjustments, curves accentuated, chest more pronounced, and even the shape of my face seemed softer, more feminine. One evening, I decided to try a full ensemble I had never dared before. A tight-fitting dress that hugged my new curves, high heels that made my legs feel elongated and elegant, and a wig that added length and volume to my hair. The sensation of the heels alone was intoxicating, making every step deliberate, calculated, and feminine. I walked across the apartment slowly, testing my balance, admiring the sway of my hips, the way the dress accentuated my chest and waist. The mirror in the corner reflected a version of myself I barely recognized, but couldn't stop marveling at. Makeup had become more daring, too. I layered eyeshadow with careful precision, applied eyeliner that emphasized my almond-shaped eyes, and finished with a gloss that made my lips full and inviting. The hormones seemed to respond to every touch, heightening my sensitivity, making my skin almost electric under my fingertips. Every brush, every swipe, every contour was both a thrill and a challenge, pushing me closer to the edge of discovery with each passing moment. Mrs. Presence loomed over me like a shadow. Even when she wasn't home, I felt her awareness pressing down, making me cautious. One morning, as I prepared for work, I noticed a small change in her behavior, an almost imperceptible glance at me that lingered too long, a raised eyebrow at the curve of my hip beneath my shirt. My pulse quickened. Was she noticing? Was she starting to suspect? I forced a casual smile, brushing off the thought, but the tension lingered. Each interaction became a delicate balancing act between secrecy and expression, thrill and fear. The hormones brought more subtle, yet undeniable changes. My chest was more sensitive now, the shape unmistakable beneath my clothes, and every movement caused small, involuntary reactions. I became acutely aware of how my body responded to touch and motion, and even the slightest brush against fabric or skin sent shivers through me. The private intimacy with my own body became almost obsessive. I would linger in front of the mirror, exploring angles, admiring curves, and marveling at the reflection that seemed almost too perfect, too foreign, to be mine. One afternoon, I received a text from Ms. "I might be home early today. Don't forget we have dinner with your parents later." My heart sank. The thought of her arriving while I was mid-transformation made me anxious and excited all at once. I hurried to adjust my outfit, smoothing the dress over my hips, practicing the way I would walk, the gestures I would make. The anticipation was electric, each passing minute stretching longer than it should. That evening, I heard her keys jingling at the door far sooner than expected. I froze, mid-step, clutching my skirt, the heels wobbling slightly under my weight. Ms. entered, humming, and paused. Her eyes swept over me, lingering just a second too long. "You look different," she said softly. My heart thumped in my chest, unsure whether it was from fear or thrill. "I just felt like trying something new," I replied, keeping my voice casual but slightly higher than usual. She nodded, smiling faintly, moving to the kitchen. Relief washed over me, but the near discovery sent adrenaline coursing through my veins. After Ms. settled, I allowed myself a quiet sigh of triumph. The tension, the secrecy, and the risk made the transformation feel more intoxicating than ever. Each moment was a test, a dance along the razor's edge of exposure. My reflection in the mirror became a silent accomplice, the only witness to the changes, the new curves, the softer features, the delicate sway that had become second nature. I started to notice small, symbolic moments, reminders of the duality I now lived with. A wig slipping slightly during a twirl, the hem of my dress brushing over a developing curve, the click of high heels echoing in the apartment. Each moment carried a weight of suspense, as if the world could see through the careful veil I had created, exposing the new me to Ms., to friends, or even to strangers. The thrill of these near misses became addictive, each one feeding the desire to push further, to explore more daring expressions of femininity. By the end of part 4, I realized that my transformation had become more than physical. The hormones, the clothing, the makeup, all had reshaped not just my body but my identity. I walked differently, spoke differently, even thought differently. The tension between secrecy and expression, fear and thrill, had become a constant undercurrent, making every glance, every touch, every reflection an adventure in both pleasure and suspense. By the third week, I had become almost addicted to the transformation. Every hour alone was a chance to explore new expressions of femininity, to test the limits of what my body could convey. The hormones had intensified, the changes more pronounced. My chest had developed a roundness I could feel beneath my clothes, my hips curved more distinctly, and even my gait had shifted, naturally adopting the swaying elegance of a feminine walk. Each step reminded me of the delicate balance between secrecy and exposure, and I thrived on the thrill. The mirror had become both my confidant and my adversary. I would stand for long periods, tracing my reflection, adjusting skirts and blouses, applying makeup with meticulous care. Every swipe of eyeliner or dab of blush heightened the sense of intimacy I felt with myself, but also the constant awareness that Ms. could walk in at any moment. The adrenaline of near discovery had become addictive, turning simple gestures into electrifying moments. High heels had transformed from a challenge to a tool of empowerment. Each step was deliberate, my movements fluid and confident, my hips swaying in a way that felt natural yet controlled. I practiced walking across the room, pausing, turning, and observing the reflection of each step. The click of the heels on the floor became a private soundtrack to my transformation, a constant reminder of the secret identity I was cultivating. Mrs. Presence now dominated my thoughts even when she wasn't home. Her subtle comments, the way she glanced at me, the soft hums of conversation, weaving herself into my daily awareness, kept me on edge. One evening, she returned early, without warning. I froze mid-movement, clutching my dress to prevent it from slipping. Her eyes lingered for a fraction longer than usual. "You're different tonight," she murmured, her tone curious but unaccusing. I forced a laugh, heart racing, replying casually, "Just trying something new." The relief of her walking away was immediate, but the rush of adrenaline lingered, a delicious mix of fear and excitement that coursed through me. The hormones had brought unexpected sensations. Skin tingling under fabric, heightened sensitivity to touch, and even the softness of my hair brushing my cheek, all became intensely erotic and personal experiences. Each movement, each gesture carried a new meaning. I found myself exploring my reflection in ways I had never imagined, marveling at the subtle curves, the delicate features, the femininity that was no longer a fantasy, but a reality I could see, touch, and feel. I began documenting my transformation privately. Photographs of outfits, sketches of makeup styles, notes on how my body responded to different poses and clothing. Everything became a part of this secret project of self-discovery. The documentation was both thrilling and terrifying. What if Ms. stumbled across it? What if a single picture betrayed the hours of careful practice? Yet, the risk only heightened the excitement. The constant awareness of potential exposure made each decision more intense. I practiced subtle gestures, tilting my head just so, shifting my weight to accentuate a curve, brushing a lock of hair from my face, perfecting the art of appearing natural while feeling utterly transformed inside. These moments of performance became addictive. They blurred the line between who I had been and who I was becoming, making every mirror glance a confrontation with my evolving identity. By the end of this part, the stakes felt higher than ever. The transformation was no longer just about appearance. It had become an emotional and psychological journey. The thrill of secrecy, the intimacy with my own body, and the constant presence of Mrs. Awareness created a pressure cooker of suspense. I knew the next step, testing these changes outside the safety of my apartment, would push me into dangerous territory. The reflection in the mirror now seemed to warn me. One slip, one careless gesture, and everything could be revealed. The evening had begun like any other, with the apartment quiet and the world outside muted. But inside, every nerve in my body was taut, anticipating a potential disaster. Tonight, I had decided to wear a new ensemble I had never dared before, a fitted dress that clung to every curve, heels so high they made my legs feel impossibly long, and a wig styled in soft waves that framed my face like a perfect portrait. I had spent hours in front of the mirror, adjusting every detail, practicing movements, and imagining the reactions of anyone who might see me like this. Ms. had texted earlier that she would be late, giving me the perfect window. My pulse raced with excitement and fear. Each movement in the apartment seemed louder than usual. The creak of the floorboards beneath my heels, the rustle of the dress against my skin, the swish of hair brushing my shoulders. It was as if every sound was amplified to remind me that I was on the edge of exposure. I moved to the living room mirror, studying my reflection in minute detail. The transformation was complete. My face, softened and slightly altered by the estrogen, seemed almost unrecognizable. My eyes, now framed with eyeliner and mascara, held a new depth. My lips, full and glossy, hinted at both innocence and seduction. The dress hugged my chest and hips in a way that was undeniably feminine. Every part of me screamed of the identity I had cultivated in secret. Then, the sound of the door unlocking froze me. Ms. was home early. My heart leapt into my throat as I fumbled to adjust the hem of the dress, my heels wobbling slightly on the slick floor. I could hear her footsteps approaching, slow and deliberate, almost deliberate enough to mock me. Each step felt like a countdown to disaster. I ducked behind the couch, trying to smooth the fabric, hoping that my silhouette wouldn't betray me. "Hello." Mrs. voice floated through the apartment, calm yet tinged with curiosity. I held my breath, willing my heartbeat to quieten. "I didn't expect you to be dressed like that," she continued, the pause lingering just long enough to make me sweat. The words weren't accusing, but the weight behind them pressed down on me. My mind raced. Should I emerge, explain, or pretend to be casual? Before I could decide, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. The vibration echoed like a drumbeat through the tense room. My hand shook as I reached for it, and in that instant, a heel slipped on the polished floor. The sudden click of imbalance made Miss snap her head in my direction. I froze mid-motion, lips parted, heart hammering. She walked closer, eyes scanning every inch of me, curiosity mingling with something else I couldn't identify. Intrigue, perhaps, or disbelief. "You've changed," she said softly, stepping closer. My pulse surged. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, but the thrill of being seen in this new form made my body tremble with a mix of fear and excitement. I could feel the estrogen coursing through me, heightening every sensation, making my skin sensitive to the smallest brush of air. The room felt smaller, charged with tension, each second stretching longer than the last. Then the phone buzzed again, and this time it was a video call from a friend. The sudden intrusion of technology added another layer of danger. My fingers fumbled, trying to reject the call without making a sound, but the vibration shifted, almost tipping my balance. Mrs. Gaze followed the motion, sharp and calculating. "Are you expecting someone?" she asked, voice calm but probing. I stammered, Just a friend checking in." The words sounded hollow even to me. Miss took a step closer, her eyes scanning me with intensity. The distance between us was charged, each breath a whisper of tension. I realized that this moment, this instant, was the culmination of weeks of secrecy, experimentation, and transformation. One wrong move, one slip of the dress or wig, and everything I had hidden would be exposed. The thrill of being seen, of almost being discovered, collided with a raw, overwhelming fear that made my hands tremble and my knees weak. I barely managed to steady myself as Miss circled me, her eyes never leaving my face. Every detail of my transformation was under her gaze, my wig slightly askew, the way the dress clung to my hips, the subtle roundness of my chest beneath the fabric. My heart pounded so loudly it felt like it could betray me. Every muscle in my body was coiled with tension, every movement measured, hesitant, like walking a tightrope over a pit of fire. She stopped abruptly, tilting her head. "I didn't know you experimented like this," she said softly, her voice a mix of amusement and curiosity. I swallowed hard, words failing me. My fingers instinctively smoothed the front of the dress, trying to hide the trembling that I couldn't control. The estrogen had made me sensitive in ways I hadn't anticipated. Even the brush of the fabric against my skin sent shivers of both anxiety and exhilaration through me. Mrs. Gaze softened for a fraction of a second, then sharpened again. "Are you enjoying this?" she asked, the question laced with a mixture of mischief and intent. I froze, caught in a web of conflicting emotions. Part of me longed to confess everything, to reveal the journey I had been on. The hormones, the careful transformations, the thrill of becoming someone entirely new. Another part of me screamed to hide, to retreat back into the safety of my old self. The apartment seemed to shrink around us. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic outside, even the tick of the wall clock became amplified, echoing like a countdown. I shifted slightly, trying to maintain balance on my heels, and almost tripped over the rug. My heart leapt into my throat, and Mrs. Eyes flicked downward for the briefest moment. The tension was unbearable, the fear of exposure mingling with a strange exhilaration I couldn't deny. I didn't mean for you to find out like this," I stammered, words barely audible. Mrs. Lips curved into a small, knowing smile. "I think I like it," she said. The simple statement, delivered with calm certainty, sent a shockwave through me. Relief and panic collided inside my chest. Relief, because she hadn't reacted with anger or judgment. Panic, because now the stakes felt even higher. She had noticed, and her reaction was unpredictable. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again, this time an urgent text from a colleague asking if I could log in for a late-night project. The vibration startled me, and I instinctively reached to silence it. My fingers brushed against the edge of my wig, and I felt it shift precariously. I froze, heart hammering. One wrong movement, and my secret would be laid bare. Mrs. Eyes followed my hand, sharp and assessing. I forced a nervous laugh, hoping it would seem casual. "You've really changed," Ms. murmured, circling me slowly again. Her voice was calm but heavy with intent, every syllable punctuated by the soft click of her heels against the floor. I could feel the estrogen working its magic, my body responding to every touch, every glance, every tiny movement. The room was charged, a delicate dance of tension and intimacy. I realized, with both excitement and fear, that this moment had become more than just about secrecy. It was about power, control, and the fragile balance of trust. A sudden knock at the door made both of us jump. Mrs. Eyes narrowed, and I froze mid-gesture, my body locked in place. The knock came again, sharper this time, almost urgent. My mind raced. Was it a neighbor, a delivery, someone who could shatter the fragile reality I had been building? I glanced at Ms., who raised an eyebrow, half amused, half warning. My pulse surged, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I had to act, had to decide whether to risk revealing myself further or retreat to safety. "Go check," Miss said softly, her tone calm but commanding. My legs trembled as I approached the door, heels clicking precariously. I peeked through the peephole, holding my breath, heart racing. A courier stood there, holding a small package. Relief washed over me, but only briefly. The interaction, though mundane, had heightened the suspense, making every movement feel like a potential trap. Returning to the living room, I noticed the mirror again, reflecting my dual existence, my old self and the transformed persona I had cultivated over weeks of secrecy. Ms. followed my gaze, eyes locking onto mine in the reflection. The tension in the room became almost unbearable. For a moment, time seemed suspended, every heartbeat and breath magnified. I realized that nothing would ever feel normal again. The balance between who I was and who I had become was fragile, and any misstep could shatter it completely. After the courier left, I sank onto the edge of the sofa, heels clicking softly against the floor. My body was still trembling, my mind racing. The adrenaline from the near discovery pulsed in my veins, leaving me simultaneously exhausted and electrified. Ms. leaned against the doorway, watching me with a mixture of curiosity and subtle amusement. Her gaze lingered on the contours of my figure, the way the dress hugged my curves, and I felt a strange flush creeping up my neck. I have to admit, Miss said slowly. You make this look convincing. Her words were playful, but beneath the teasing tone, I sensed a deeper weight, an unspoken challenge, a question hanging in the air. How far would I go to maintain this secret persona? My stomach nodded. I realized that this wasn't just about appearance. It was a test of my composure, my control, my willingness to risk everything for the thrill of transformation. The estrogen had intensified my senses. I felt every texture of the dress against my skin, every soft brush of the wig across my shoulders, every pulse of my heartbeat. It was intoxicating, overwhelming, and terrifying all at once. My fingers idly played with the hem of the dress, twisting and smoothing it, but the sensation made me hyper-aware of my body in ways I hadn't expected. I was acutely conscious of every curve, every shadow, every movement that betrayed my transformation. Ms. moved closer, and the air between us thickened. Do you like being seen like this? She asked, her voice lower now, almost teasing, almost probing. I hesitated, caught between honesty and fear. Could I admit the truth without risking judgment or mockery? Could I reveal the excitement, the vulnerability, the way the estrogen had changed not just my body but my perception of myself? I nodded slightly, words failing me. The acknowledgement seemed to fuel her curiosity further. Suddenly, the intercom buzzed, a sharp, unexpected intrusion that made me jump. My heart lurched. Who could it be now? I wasn't ready for another potential exposure. Mrs. Eyes glimmered with mischief as she watched me freeze in place. I had a fleeting moment of panic, my secret, my dual identity, teetering on the edge of discovery again. The intercom buzzed a second time. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my trembling hands as I approached it. Who is it? Ms. asked, voice calm but laced with anticipation. My fingers hovered over the button, debating whether to answer or ignore it. The temptation to retreat to safety battled with the growing thrill of confrontation, of proving that I could maintain composure even under scrutiny. I pressed the button cautiously. Delivery for you, a voice called from the intercom. Relief washed over me, but only briefly. Every minor interaction now carried the weight of potential exposure, each sound amplified, each movement fraught with danger. I buzzed the courier in, my hands shaking slightly as I balanced on the high heels. Mrs. Eyes never left me, studying every twitch, every hesitation. The tension between us was electric, charged with unspoken questions and possibilities. As I retrieved the package, I realized how much my perception had shifted in just a few hours. The estrogen, the transformation, the thrill of being seen as someone else. All of it had altered not just my appearance, but my awareness of my own body and identity. I felt both powerful and vulnerable, exposed yet strangely confident. Ms. watched silently as I handled the package, her expression unreadable. The uncertainty in her gaze made every movement feel like a test, every gesture a potential revelation. Returning to the living room, I placed the package on the coffee table, trying to steady my racing heart. Ms. stepped closer, stopping just a few feet away. Her eyes scanned me, drinking in the details of my transformation, the curve of my hips, the softness of my face, the subtle sway of my posture. The room seemed to shrink around us, every sound, every breath amplified. I felt the weight of her gaze like a physical presence, pressing down on me, demanding acknowledgement, demanding truth. Do you think you could keep this up? She asked, voice soft but firm, probing the limits of my resolve. I froze, heart pounding, realizing that the question was more than rhetorical. It was a challenge, a test, a subtle trap. The exhilaration of being caught, of existing on the edge of discovery, mingled with the fear of what might happen if I failed. I felt the estrogen's effects more keenly than ever, my sensitivity, my awareness, my vulnerability, all heightened to an almost unbearable degree. The mirror reflected both of us, a silent witness to the tension and transformation. My own eyes, wide and alert, stared back at me, mingling with Mrs. Gaze. In that reflection, I saw the duality of my existence, the self I had known for years and the new persona that had emerged, shaped by hormones, experimentation, and desire. The two identities coexisted in precarious balance, each step, each glance threatening to tip the scales. The party's lights glimmered against the glass walls, casting golden reflections over the room. I stood in the corner, clutching a champagne glass, trying to blend in. But I could feel every eye on me, admiring, analyzing, judging. And in the center of it all stood my boss, my so-called mentor, who had turned me into his perfect illusion. When our eyes met, he smiled that familiar, dangerous smile. "You clean up well," he said, his voice low as he approached. Almost too well. I swallowed hard, my heart thudding. "You said this would be temporary," I whispered. "Did I?" He tilted his head, pretending to think. "No, I said this would be transformative. You've become something far more valuable than a regular employee." I wanted to scream, but my voice trembled instead. "You don't own me." He leaned close, the smell of his cologne tightening my chest. "I already do. Look around. They don't see him anymore. They only see her. You're perfect now, elegant, graceful, everything I envisioned." The music pulsed, the crowd oblivious to the tension between us. My pulse quickened. I needed to get out before I completely lost myself. But every reflection I passed, every mirror, every polished surface, mocked me with the image I'd become. Then, from across the room, I saw someone watching me, a woman in a black dress, her eyes sharp and familiar. It was Delilah, one of my old friends from my real life. My throat tightened. If she recognized me, everything would unravel. But she approached, her heels clicking softly against the floor. "You look amazing," she said, her eyes scanning my face. "But do I know you?" I forced a laugh, trying to sound natural. "I don't think so. I'm new around here." She frowned, clearly unconvinced. Then, her eyes widened slightly. "Wait, no way. You're..." Before she could finish, my boss's hand gripped my arm. "Excuse us," he said smoothly, pulling me away. His smile never faltered, but his voice dropped to a growl. "You're getting sloppy. Do you want your old life to come crashing down? Because I can make sure it disappears completely." That was it. Something in me broke. "I'm done," I whispered, my voice trembling. "I'm not playing your game anymore." His grin faded. "You think you can just walk away?" "Yes," I said, and for the first time I meant it. "You turned me into this, but I'm not afraid of it anymore." His eyes narrowed. "Then enjoy your new identity. Because the old one, it's gone." He released me with a smirk, as if certain I wouldn't follow through. But I didn't hesitate. I turned, pushed through the crowd, and ran. Out the doors, down the marble steps, into the night air. The wind whipped my hair as I tore off my heels and kept running. When I finally stopped, I was shaking but free. The city lights blurred through tears, and I realized I couldn't go back. Not because he'd destroyed my past, but because I'd changed too much to fit into it anymore. I looked down at my reflection in a store window, soft makeup, curled hair, a woman who looked confident even through the fear. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. Then I smiled faintly. "I'll decide who I am now," I whispered. And for the first time since this nightmare began, that felt like the truth. The night air was cold as I wandered through the empty streets, the sound of my heels echoing faintly against the pavement. My hair, once something I'd constantly tried to hide, now framed my face perfectly, catching faint glimmers from the passing streetlights. I should have felt relief. I'd escaped. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Every step I took seemed to pull me further away from the person I used to be. My reflection in the windows didn't lie. The woman staring back at me wasn't just a disguise anymore. She was real, frighteningly real. And she carried every ounce of pain, manipulation, and strength that had been forced into her. When I reached my apartment building, my hands trembled as I unlocked the door. Inside, everything was neat, organized, too neat. The faint scent of perfume still lingered from earlier, and my wardrobe stood open, filled with dresses, skirts, and heels. A few months ago, that sight would have made me sick. Now, I just stood there, silent. Then I noticed something on my vanity table, a small, sealed envelope with my name written in a neat, sharp hand. His handwriting. My heart dropped. I tore it open. Inside was a note. You ran. Good. That's what I wanted. Freedom looks good on you. But don't forget, you're still part of my creation. And soon you'll see why. Beneath the note was a flash drive. My breath caught. I didn't want to, but curiosity overpowered fear. I plugged it into my laptop. A video opened, footage of me, clips from the office, the makeup sessions, the nights he made me practice walking, speaking, smiling. Every humiliating moment, recorded. Then his voice filled the speakers. The world loves transformation stories. I think it's time they meet mine. Smile for the camera, my masterpiece. The screen cut to black. My stomach twisted. He wasn't finished. He'd been planning this all along. I wasn't just his assistant or his experiment. He wanted to turn my life into a story. A twisted exhibition of control and beauty. For a long moment, I couldn't move. Then, slowly, a new kind of calm filled me. Not fear, but resolve. If he wanted a story, I'd give him one. But it wouldn't end the way he expected. I opened my phone, scrolling through the contacts until I found Delilah's number. My thumb hovered for a second before I pressed call. She answered immediately. Who is this? It's me, I said softly. I need your help. A pause. Then, quietly, she replied. I knew it. I knew it was you at that party. Where are you? I told her everything, every cruel test, every manipulation, every forced smile. She didn't interrupt. When I finally stopped talking, her voice was sharp, steady. Then we end this. Together. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror again, this time by choice. My reflection didn't scare me anymore. The woman staring back looked composed, ready. I applied lipstick slowly, deliberately. My transformation had started as his game, but now it was my armor. As I slipped on my coat and stepped into the hallway, my phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. Unknown number. You can't hide forever. I smiled faintly, typing back one word. Watch me. Then I walked into the sunlight, heels clicking with quiet defiance. For the first time, I wasn't running from the identity he forced on me. I was running toward who I'd become on my own terms. But somewhere, deep in the city, I knew he was still watching, waiting for his next move. And something told me, this was only the beginning. The night stretched on endlessly, shadows crawling across the walls of my apartment as the glow of my laptop screen flickered. The video on the flash drive had ended minutes ago, but its echoes still rang in my head. My hands trembled, yet something inside me had hardened. He wasn't just playing with me anymore. He was hunting me, through the cameras, through the files, through the version of me he'd built and branded. I slammed the laptop shut, but even in the silence, I could still hear his voice. That smooth, taunting tone. Freedom looks good on you. No. He didn't own that word. Not anymore. I grabbed my phone and started pacing the room. Every message I'd ignored from friends, every contact I'd cut off out of fear, they all glared back at me now. I typed a message to Ms., but stopped halfway. What would I even say? That I'd been drugged into womanhood and filmed like a puppet? That he wanted to turn me into his masterpiece? No one would believe it. But before I could think further, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number, check your window. My heart stopped. Slowly I turned. Outside, under the faint glow of the street lamp, a figure stood, still, watching. Their silhouette was tall, familiar. For a moment I thought it was him. I backed away instinctively, breath quickening, until I realized the figure was holding something. A package. Then, just as suddenly, it dropped the box on the steps and disappeared into the night. I stared at it from the window, pulse hammering. Minutes passed before I dared go downstairs. The wind was biting as I crouched, picking up the plain brown box. My name was scrawled on top in that same haunting handwriting. Inside, wrapped neatly in tissue paper, was a dress. A deep red, silk satin dress, The exact one he'd made me wear the night he first called me perfect. Folded beneath it was a note. The world doesn't forget beauty. Wear this again. Tomorrow. You'll understand why. My knees went weak. I dropped the box and stumbled back into the building, slamming the door behind me. The walls suddenly felt too close, the air too thick. He knew where I lived. He'd never stopped watching. That night, sleep was impossible. Every sound felt like a footstep, every flicker of light a camera flash. When dawn finally bled into the room, my reflection caught my eye, dark circles, hair messy, but still undeniably her. The woman he'd created. And beneath the fear, another feeling stirred, anger. I wasn't going to hide anymore. With trembling hands, I pulled the red dress from the box and hung it by the window. The fabric shimmered like blood in the sunlight. He wanted me to wear it. Fine. I'd wear it, but not for him. I spent the morning preparing. My makeup was flawless, deliberate. My lipstick, the same shade he'd chosen, painted on with surgical precision. I looked at myself in the mirror and whispered, "You don't control me." But then my phone buzzed again. A new video link. No sender. No caption. I clicked. It opened to a live stream. My image filled the screen, me, standing in that same dress, at that same vanity, broadcast live to an audience count rapidly climbing. 10, 50, 100, thousands. He was streaming me. I froze. The webcam light on my laptop blinked red. Somehow, he'd activated it remotely. My reflection stared back at me from the screen, stunned, painted, exposed. A voice spoke through the speakers. Calm, smooth, familiar. She thinks she's free. But freedom looks best when everyone's watching. The chat exploded with comments, laughing emojis, shocked faces, heart reactions. My breath caught. This wasn't just humiliation, it was his grand finale. Panicking, I yanked the laptop's cord, ripping it from the wall. The screen went black. Silence. Then, from behind me, a faint click. The door. Slowly, I turned. Footsteps echoed from the hallway outside. Someone was there. Closer, closer. A shadow stretched under the doorframe. Then, 3 sharp knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Open up, a voice said softly. You left something unfinished. My blood ran cold. I stepped back, heart pounding, staring at the door handle as it began to turn. The door swung open. My breath froze in my chest as the dim light from the hallway spilled into my apartment. For a split second, I braced myself to see him, the man who'd ruined my life, the manipulator who had turned me into a living experiment. But it wasn't him. It was Ms. She stood in the doorway, clutching a small envelope, her face pale, her eyes darting around the room. For a heartbeat, we both just stared, her gaze falling on my red dress, my painted lips, the smeared mascara under my trembling eyes. Silence. What did you do to yourself? She whispered. My voice cracked. Ms. I can explain. She stepped inside, her expression somewhere between shock and heartbreak. You disappeared for weeks. Then someone sent me this. She held up the envelope. My stomach twisted as she pulled out photos, images of me in different stages of transformation. Dresses, makeup, even hospital records. Each picture was stamped with one word in red ink. Hers. He sent them to you, didn't he? I said hoarsely. Her lips quivered. Who is he? I turned away, unable to meet her eyes. He called himself a doctor. Said he could help me become better. I thought it was just therapy at first, but then he started me on pills. I didn't even know what they were until it was too late. Ms. stepped closer. You mean estrogen? I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. He changed me, my body, my mind. I can't even remember when it stopped being an experiment and became my life. For a long moment, Ms. said nothing. Then she gently touched my arm. You should have told me. I was scared, I whispered. I thought you'd leave, that you'd think I was a freak. Her hand lingered on my cheek. You're not a freak. You're a victim. A choked laugh escaped me. Victim? Maybe at first. But now, I don't even know who I am anymore. She looked into my eyes, really looked, and for the first time, I saw understanding. Maybe not of what I'd become, but of what I'd been through. Then let's find out together, she said softly. But before I could respond, a low buzz came from my laptop. Mrs. Head turned sharply. What was that? I ran to the desk and flipped it open. The screen blinked to life on its own. The same familiar interface loaded, the live stream platform. But this time, there was no video, no chat, just a single message. You finished your dose. Now, let's see if you can live without me. A location pin dropped on the screen, a warehouse outside the city. Ms. frowned. What is this? I swallowed hard. The place he kept me. She grabbed her coat. Then let's end this. Hours later, the warehouse loomed in the distance, abandoned and silent except for the hum of wind through its broken windows. We stepped inside cautiously, flashlights slicing through the darkness. Old lab tables, empty bottles, scattered syringes. It was like walking into a graveyard of my past self. And then I saw it, a cracked mirror, leaning against the far wall. My reflection, half-lit, half-shadowed, stared back at me. My red dress shimmered faintly in the dusty light. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize the person looking back. She looks strong, Ms. murmured beside me. She's not the same, I said quietly. No, Ms. replied. She's stronger than both of us thought. On the mirror's surface, a single sentence had been written in red lipstick. She was never my experiment. She was my masterpiece. I reached up and wiped the words away with trembling fingers. No, I whispered. Not anymore. And with that, I smashed the mirror. The sound shattered through the warehouse, sharp, final, freeing. When the last echo faded, Ms. took my hand. Let's go home. We walked out into the dawn. The first rays of sunlight broke across the horizon, warm and unreal. The red dress glowed faintly in the light, as if the night's darkness was burning away with every step. For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim or a puppet. I felt like me, whoever me was now. Epilogue. Weeks later, the live stream account disappeared. The videos were wiped. The username, Dr. X, went dark. Authorities said he vanished without a trace. No records, no real name, not even fingerprints. But sometimes, when I scroll through my phone late at night, I see a new follower notification. No profile picture. No posts. Just one word for a name. Still watching. And every time, I whisper to myself, let him watch. Because the person he created, the one he thought he controlled, she's the one who's still standing. And she's never going back.